Welcome to episode 2 of Build Back Better, an interview series designed to help education leaders shape, refine, improve, and contextualize the support they're providing to vulnerable populations in Thailand and Myanmar. My name is Greg Teres-Budis, and on this platform, we will highlight viable solutions working to keep children safe, engaged, and learning during this unprecedented time. Today, I'm joined by Ichiro Myazawa, the Program Specialist on Literacy and Flexible Learning Strategies at UNESCO Thailand. For the last 25 years, Ichiro has led educational development projects for disadvantaged children and youth in both Asia and Africa, including Indonesia, the Philippines, Myanmar, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Tanzania, and Kenya. He has a wealth of experience designing and implementing programs related to information communication technology, literacy, non-formal education, lifelong learning, and teacher education. The last time I saw Ichiro, he was our keynote speaker when we launched our Bridges research on migrant education in Bangkok. Welcome, Ichiro.
Thank you so much, Greg. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great. Last time we talked, we were in Bangkok together.
Right.
How are you doing?
It was great. And then, yeah, the event was great. I wonder when it was like a few months ago.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday.
Right. Yes.
So we'll get right into it. I've got 3 questions for you. The first question is, we're both working with minority populations, and I think equity is a large challenge that nations are facing all over the world right now. So
yes.
I wonder what educational considerations are needed for the inclusion of minority groups, such as migrants and refugees, during this challenging time.
Thank you. Such a great question. Let me start with like policy level. We do have to raise our voices. It's easy for us to be forgotten. You know, no government was ready for this, actually. No government was prepared for this, responding COVID very well. For example, if I take my country as an example, they have a 25,000 primary school, secondary school, and the high school closed, basically, right? And then now they are in a panic because 95% of them, the students, they are not prepared to do anything to do with online. There's no like interactive connection teachers, right? So then most of the government, they are just now focused on just, students from normal school, right? From, middle income, families, right? That's their attention. So they feel like they have to return. They have to make sure things are happening. So then when we look at the migrant or ethnic minorities or refugees, I mean, it's so difficult for them to keep in their mind. So then, but then nevertheless, person like us, UN, right? Or person like you know what's going on the action on the ground, right? The things that are going on. We have to raise voices. And that's obviously important thing, number one. And then if we look at the ground level, I think I want to share a few, consideration which are so important and something really fundamental. Number one is connecting teacher and the children. So this is so important to avoid any kind of isolation. If isolation happening for long, education will be gone. So we have to make sure that the connection is there, communicating, whatever available. Mobile is fine, right? And whatever the methodology, any chatting system if they have, even parents, that's so important. The second of all, which is related to the number one, is basically personal care. That's most important thing, education. I think you know it because you are grounded there and then knowing lots of realities, right? Personal care, and then look at the situation and communicating, and then personal, in a sense, personal curriculum, personal care monitoring. That's really important. And the number 3 point is what kind of contents. Most important thing is like engagement. Just avoid like a boredom. Right? Because if there's isolation, boredom, nothing happens for sure. And especially we know the situation is the parents are suffering, no food, right? No income. They may have to move some other places. So that's anyway first priority. Then if I try to insert education, obviously the contents must be really related to their needs and then something relevant. And then number 4, and I know it's difficult, but then we have to take this crisis proactively. We cannot do everything like reactively. Right? And then in a sense, this is maybe a good chance for us to change the education system, especially for the even like migrant children. So maybe this is the right time for us to do something new for the future. So that's some key concept or consideration I can think of.
No, and I completely, first 2 points, uh, both, put teachers at the center. And I feel like, I mean, I follow the teacher task force on education, and their messaging is quite clear that teachers need to be involved at the center of any intervention to provide continuous education. And your second point is that in order to do that, right, we really have to think about the teacher's well-being, their social emotional health. I mean, everyone right now is struggling, and there's a lot of weight on teachers' shoulders to navigate the uncertainty. And I think it's so critical that you mentioned that we need to make sure that our teachers are safe, that they're supported, and they've got the tools that they need to be able to help the children continuously learn in whatever way that looks. So great points. My second question for you is kind of building off of that first one. What solutions have you come across to promote equality at schools that have marginalized student groups during this period of school closure? You mentioned Japan, where a lot of families, the majority of families, don't have the devices in order to be able to e-learn. How do we promote an equitable solution for all children?
Last, let's say 1.5 months, let's say 6 weeks, I have been checking lots of news, which country is doing what, especially to support disadvantaged children and youth in terms of continue to education. And then the common ones, in a sense, we realize that yes, we may have a mobile phone, maybe parents have mobile phone, and then penetration is so high, but then we realize that there's no PC at home, there's no Wi-Fi at home. And then that's the case in my country, US, everywhere, I think, right? And if I check the policy of German, French, US, Korea, Japan, right? They now realize the situation. Now they started to donate, for example, or just lend hardware to the children who are suffering, basically. Or sometimes big company like Amazon, other company, they donate like 4,000, 5,000 Chromebook or tablet for education purposes. And then some cases, like a local government, they check and they just lend their hardware too. So things like this are becoming more common in some countries. At the same time, they realize, hey, how about the contents? Hardware, somehow they manage, but still, reaching everyone is so difficult. But somehow they try to manage. And then how about the contents? And then many countries decided to start national platform. And in some countries, they do it private sectors so that everybody can just access to it. So that's something happening. And in some countries, if they have no internet connection, just nothing available, and then we realize, even including Thailand and even my country, they depend on the TV too. Interesting case, like in India, they do have a 32 channel, education channel taking place, and they can watch, depends on the needs, depends on the levels. That's very interesting anyway. So TV, radio still work. But then, of course, the showing TV, and then there's no guarantee that the kids are sitting and watch, right? So we have to make sure, we have to cut, chop into the, right size, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then try to do some interactions. If in the case of, Thailand, I understand after, 15 minutes, 20 minutes video, they are supposed to do some line chatting, and they can do some discussion. Right? When, of course, for that case, they need a mobile phone or tablet anyway. Right? So then try to make it, interactive. Yes, broadcasting and then interactive as much as possible. So that's something happening. But then, no government, again, no government was so prepared. They have been just exploring. And I don't think I can say, hey, this is a really successful case, because they are trying to just exploring. So that's all I can share now, Greg.
It's great. I kind of building off your first point. One of the many roles of a teacher is to keep the learning as a process, and that requires feedback loops. That requires establishing an accountability system, and I think there's this kind of misconception sometimes that if the resources are online, then learning can happen, or learning will happen. And just like you mentioned, right, there needs to be that follow-up. There needs to be that's where teachers are so critical. And I think even there's some great platforms out there, but they're never going to be the same as having a physical teacher, who knows the students' names, who knows their abilities to support them. So absolutely.
Mm.
And my last question, thinking about the situation here, a lot of the migrant children from Myanmar who are studying in Thailand, when they go home, like you mentioned, they don't have connectivity, devices are not available. The 9 refugee camps along the border, very similar in terms of the lack of resources, the inability to connect through an internet system. And I was wondering if you could share some examples of where continuous education has been provided in low resource contexts.
Yeah, good point. Actually, actually, that's the core issue we face, Greg. Right? I think you know better than I do. As far as I understand, in method, right? I know still there's a risk, but then the teacher started to meet 3 or 4 kids together. They're sharing one, for example, devices. So then actually, 1 device per child is so difficult. But as long as if they have an internet connection, for example, 1 teacher, 1 device, and 3 children, and they can meet not every day, but then from time to time to catch up the contents. And the sharing could be one of the alternative. And then also some collaboration, local collaboration. And the things are not that expensive. Sorry, not that cheap, but not that expensive too. So if we ensure with partnership and then convincing other, of course, UN, NGO, it might be possible to just, come up with like $100, for example. And then, right now the telecommunication becoming cheaper and cheaper. Even, 3 telecommunication company, they started like a student SIM. So which means really cheap to get, internet connection 4G. Things like this. I mean, that might be the alternative. But yet, there's no guarantee that this works everywhere. But an important point, as I mentioned in the first, the question, how we make sure the connection among teachers and then children. And then if possible, using some device, TV, radio, whatever available, and try to get good relevant content and then, interact each other. So that's, something, yes, I would recommend.
Great. And I mean, it's very similar to what we, together with some of our partner organizations here, we've written a joint concept note where we want to try and get 2 tablets for every school, so that the teachers could use that and go to the community, like you mentioned, and just work with children in small groups. And when we've talked to school leaders about what's realistic, we're hoping, I think the best we can hope for is about 1 meeting per week between the teacher and the student, because they're only able to meet with students in very small groups. But we, one of the things that I think would be so valuable, UNESCO's Learn Big app, right, has all the textbooks right there. And then once that app is downloaded on the tablet, you don't need any more connection. So they could literally be a walking library, making sure that the students have have some resources and do some activity and follow-up. I think you also mentioned a good point about right now in this critical time, learning new information is very difficult, right? I think a role of the teacher is to support students' well-being. You know, I think just by, if we can support teachers just to visit the communities, provide some emotional support, a little bit of learning, maybe some review from the previous year. I almost think it's too ambitious to try and learn more things at home, new things at home in a situation like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point, Greg.
Well,
And then thank you so much for the mentioning about Lambic. And then also related to the first point, how do we make this crisis like a proactively take this issue proactive and make it for the future? Online is not actually one way, and actually even our side we can monitor individual too, and of course we keep the privacy for sure. But at the same time, when the student are getting something online, which means there is some data remain in the server, and then which must be analyzed, and then this must be reflected for the teacher for better support. So this is actually even the system for the future. So then, yes, it's such a tough crisis, but then if we can introduce any of it, but then we look at this data-driven, evidence-based education system, which makes sure even personalized contents. So that's the direction also we have to see for the future. Yes, I know it's tough and it's so easy to say, but then yes, that's the direction of the future education. Yes, in my view.
And I feel like this situation has just shaken the foundations of so many education systems and platforms, and I wonder what education is going to look like when we get out of this. You know, will that I mean, there's been a lot of advocates for personalized learning over the years, and I wonder if after this that becomes a real movement, right? Governments start adopting that because of
Yes.
this kind of context. So,
Yes.
Ichiro,
Yes. And then maybe can I mention the last point?
yeah,
Even it might be a chance for us if the teacher teaching at the Migrant Learning Center, they start to create online course by themselves. If they have a mobile phone like this, right? There is no excuse. They can be like a YouTuber to create 10 minutes video, 10 minutes lesson. And if we compile, yes, now we have a platform of education for the migrant children. So it's an opportunity too, right? So hopefully, right? Now, of course, I know not all teachers having like a 4G mobile phone, but there is a potential, right? And then if things like this happen, because people talk about second wave, third wave, or something else, Corona may come for the future. And then again, if we have to close, right? If we create a platform or just accumulate our education knowledge in one point, maybe for the future, even now we can utilize. And then actually a few days ago, we were communicated by the Myanmar side. And then because now, Myanmar side, they promote NFPE, NFME. And then in order to train teacher, they want to create online training module. Because before, they meet each other, training the teacher face-to-face, right? 20 lectures, right? 5 days getting together Monday, but they cannot do anymore. So then they have to create online course with instructors, and then maybe more entertaining in a sense. Right? So that's the negotiation we had yesterday, and then we wonder how best we can create this kind of content. So then once they create contents like this, right, very small niche, right, in a sense. This is not for everyone, but it's not so difficult for us to create it. So then once they create it, it's going to be there for future, and even after Corona, post-Corona, people can utilize it. So even place like a method, I know it's not a gigantic area, not big resources, but then as long as the teacher has something like this, they can start recording the lessons, and of course it doesn't have to be perfect anyway, right? But then this kind of unity collaboration may help for sure for the children too. now and for the future, hopefully.
Absolutely, right? If you're able to build it, it'll stay in the cloud. It'll be there and can be used again and again and again and adapted. So Ichiro, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today.